Cool. So, just to come back, we're doing a class on how do you make your figures effective and much more clear. So, the two axes that you have to focus are the message, right? Do I have a single and clear sort of message that after someone read my plot, they understood something, right? And then it's the aesthetic. And this one is a bit less talked about, but it's very important as well because if your figure is ugly or messy, right, then people will not want to look at it. Also, if you're actually doing a presentation in front of a room and all of your figure are beautiful and stunning, you'll realize that people tend to pay more attention to what you're saying, okay? So if they pay more attention, then the message gets across better, right? So like those are the two dimensions. So always try to think about, like your particular maximization for those two axes. So basically, in my view, there are three main steps to get at making good figures. First, you have to learn and create a design system that works for you. And what I mean by this is we all have slightly different aesthetics, we all have slightly different preferences, we don't use the same fonts, we don't use the same colors, maybe you like blue, maybe you like green, right? That's okay as long as you learn and you create a consistent design system, right? And you learn from design rules and design and aesthetics rule, and you stick to it, right? It becomes your identity, right? And this identity will serve you, and you can refine it as you go, but try to make an identity so that every plot and every data viz you make, you try to aim towards that same visual identity. That will give you the training ground so that each figure you make will be better and better and better because you're always in the same bubble. If you try to go in all directions, you're never really learning anything. You're just trying many different things. The second one is to always know your data sets, know your audience. Am I talking to 12 years old? Am I talking to researchers? Am I talking to corporate people? Who am I talking to, right? And then tailor your visualizations for that, right? If I'm talking to a bunch of physicists, I'm gonna write 2 sigma instead of p-value, right? Because they think in z-score and not in p-values when I'm like showing a Gaussian. So the graph, the label, right? I'm gonna change the label so that my audience is gonna be able to read it instantly, right? So try to think, who am I gonna present this to, and use this to your advantage. And then finally, like, learn and spend the time on a graphic software. Could be Illustrator, could be Inkscape, it doesn't matter. I don't recommend Photoshop, really. Like, Photoshop is not meant at all for doing vector-based style illustration or like panel. And design is okay, but yeah, like use Illustrator or Inkscape are really the two that I would recommend. If you have money, Illustrator, or if you know how to crack it, Illustrator, or Inkscape is free and open source, is the one I use. It works just fine. I've never been restricted by the software, right? So now after this class, I'm hoping that you'll be a bit more of a designer inside yourself, right? Because designers have been working for maybe hundreds of years. They weren't called designers before, but could go all the way to Aristotle and or the Platonic shapes, and people were thinking about rules that have aesthetics, or at least we human think are aesthetically pleasing. And so here I'm gonna give you, I think 9, if I remember correctly, 9 or 10 rules, right? Which basically all of your plots for this class, at the end there's gonna be a checkbox list, and I want you all to take every single plot you're gonna make and you're gonna present and you're gonna have in your notebook, and I want you to check for each of them that you've done those 9 rules, right? That's the minimum set, which I think is the necessary set to follow for your figures to be good. The first one is design with consistency, right? And what that means is don't make something that looks like your grandparents' email, okay? Don't use 20 fonts Don't use 20 colors in words. Don't bold something and then italicize it and then, no, be consistent. You choose one font. It's your font and that's good. If you want to choose a second font, then that means that this font is always used for the same thing, right? A font is a message, a font is a style. If you bold something, it means that you're always bolding for the same reason. So that whenever someone sees, they can understand that there is a message and it's consistent. And so if they look at 10 figures that you made, they understand that bold means X, and X they can then visually like see all the time this, right? This one is rule number one, because consistency really will make even badish designs, right, look much better. If you make a poster and everything is consistent on your poster, at least from afar it doesn't look ugly, right? So that's the first rule. And so you just be anal about it. Like, and I mean, I'm personally like this. Like, I always check, are my font size the same? Is the size of the title the same on all the figure? Am I using the same color for the same thing, right? If I'm measuring cats and dogs, right, and I have 5 plots about cats and dogs, are cats always in orange and dogs always in green, right? It's important because then visually I can see it directly. Don't use similar elements like the plot type, the plot library, right? Don't change from ggplot to matplotlib, right? If you started in R, make all your plots in R. If you started in Python, make them all in Python, all right? Don't have sort of like discrepancy in terms of visual elements. Don't rescale after plotting. So that one is a bit more of a trick, but like, if you spend the time to make sure everything is correct and consistent in your code, right? By having it consistent in your code, then you know that the title, the font size of the title for your plots is always gonna be 16, say, right? But if you go then in Inkscape and you start to or Illustrator and you resize your figure, then the 16 becomes something else, and then you're losing consistency. So it's better that you change the figure size directly in Python so that the output is bigger, right? Because you need it to be bigger, because then Python is going to take care of making sure that everything else is consistent for you. So if you don't do that, then you're going to have to go in Illustrator and change all the font size by hand, etc., to make sure that it matches everything. So you're gaining time, like you're saving time by not rescaling after plotting and by doing it before. And then like the elements on your canvas, like anything else that you're adding, right? Like the footers, the citation, if you're making a figure panel, if you have A, B, C, D, right? You're making a poster, just have all of them to be the same size and location throughout, right? The A is always like A, B, C, and D on like a 4-panel figure. You're putting the A, B, C, and D always at the same location with the same font size, etc., right? So it's the same, like everything is aligned, everything is consistent. Cool. Okay, then the next thing is avoid poor legibility, right? If you need a magnifying glass to read your plot, then something is wrong, right? If I'm making a presentation and my font size is like this, how are you guys supposed to read that text, right? I mean, I can barely read it from here and you're over there, right? And now imagine this amphitheater was even twice that size. How are people at the end of the amphitheater supposed to read your plots? So avoid poor legibility by putting, the right font size, right? 10 point is the absolute minimum. Don't ever go under 10 points. We're gonna stay there. So like, 12 point is like comfortable, but it's a bit small, honestly. So go into the 14 to 18 points. This is like sort of the good range normally for the font size. You can go above 18 for massive titles and stuff like this, but for figure making, usually it's the 14 to 18 that's gonna be the sweet spot. And so if you're in doubt, just always use a bigger font size. It's better that it's bigger than too small, right? I'd rather have a big text that I can read easily than having to focus and try to understand what this x-axis label is. In general, stay away from serif font. That's because for plots, it's a bit less legible usually to have serif fonts. So try to stay with sans serif, right? Which is a type of font. Serif is like the, the little little ticks, all those little like ticks here and here, right? There's like a bunch of different little added elements that make the font a little bit less legible. And always maintain high contrast, right? Black over white, white over black, something like this. But don't go on like gray on white and stuff like this. Like this might make it a bit harder for people to read. Avoid color discord, right? And so color has that there's like theories on color. You can watch like hour-long videos on color theory on YouTube. It's quite fascinating. I recommend if you have like an hour. But basically, like, just don't do those things. You're young. You might not have had to suffer through blue screen with yellow text PowerPoint slides in your life. But when I was at the university, we had a few like teachers that would have like those basic like pure blue with pure yellow on the screen. It was really unpleasant. So don't do that. So color is really easy to understand. We all have a sort of intuitive understanding of it, but it's really hard to master, right? They can be harmonious or disharmonious based on their relationship in what's called color space. Okay? Color space is a mathematical representation of color, and there are multiple color spaces. The most common one is RGB. That's the one we mostly know, right? It's like red, green, blue, and you just mix the three and you get, this cube of red, green, blue. But the one you should try to use, if you can, is HSL, hue, saturation, lightness, right? So it's a different way to represent color mathematically, which is through three other properties. The hue is the color, or what we usually consider to be color. Saturation is how much of that color is in there, right? Zero saturation means that it's black and white. To fully saturated, it's the pure color. So you have this axis you can change. And then lightness is how white or how dark is the color, right? So this is a much more intuitive tool to choose a color, because if you have a nice green, now I like this green, but I would like to make a plot with like something that increases in intensity, right? Well, I can take the saturation value, right, or the lightness value, and I can change it. So I know I have the same green over and over again. So it's consistent. The color is consistent, but I still have the effect of lightness that changes, right? So HSL in general, and every tool you're gonna use, you can use HSL, is a much better way to think and use colors. So yeah, watch hour-long videos on color theory. It's cool. Few tips on how to use color. Usually don't try to invent a color palette, right? There are many people who have worked on this. There are papers published every year on color palettes. It's an active research field on how to choose the best color palette. So if you don't really know what you're doing, if you don't have like 3 years of painting and color theory in art school that you've done in the past, which some of you might, but don't try to make a color scheme. If you really must do it, use a tool like Paletton or other tools that have implemented a lot of the science behind how do you make a good color palette, and they offer you color palette tools, so you just choose a starting color and it's gonna give you the entire palette. So use that, right? If you want to make Mark happy, you can use the Wes Anderson's palettes from the movies of Wes Anderson's. There is R and Python, I think, but there's like some tools of people who've extracted this. If you basically yeah, you can make me happy by never using rainbows, because rainbows is like a really bad color palette, or the red, white, blue. Like I think like pure colors like red and blue with white in the middle, like it's very strong and it's not pleasant often. So like you try not to do that. Try to use better, like Cynthia's Brewer. It's a person, Miss Cynthia's Brewer. And she spent her life creating really good palettes, right? So often in the software you'd see like Brewer in the palette section. That's hers. She's a scientist and artist. who's trying to do this. Good current choices, I think, are also like Viridis and Magma. Those are not bad ones. And you can use, like some tools like Learn UI design tools. Like I'll give you the slides, don't worry. And there's like you can go on that link, and there are like a lot of nice nice palette tools. And so. Topic themes palettes, yeah. So Brewer, for example, has a lot of really good topic themes palettes. And here you'll have a lot of really interesting one as well. I don't feel it's a problem per se. Like if you just choose it carefully, depending on how many topics you have, and as long as you stay consistent with your topics across the thing, right? If you have 8 topics and you have 10 plots, the same topics per graph and bars and stuff that you're using, right? And then finally, this is my own rule, but I think they're a good rule of thumb is that your saturation should never be 100%, or it should never be 0%, except if you're really going for black and white. But for any color, it should be between 10 and 90, right? And your luminance should be between 20 and 80. If you stay within that range, like already, your colors will be much more pleasant to look at, right? No one likes a pure green. This blue, right? This blue has like a saturation of probably like 70%. It's a little gray, right? There's like a bit of grayishness into it, and that makes it more pleasant to the eye. The world around us is never fully saturated, right? We like very rarely is my jacket maybe, but that's about it. Yeah. And so yeah, if you're using multiple hues, you use a tool like Palette. Okay. The next thing is a bit weird given that I told you all of those things right now, but if you don't actually have a good reason, don't use colors. Right? Black and white is fine. Gray, levels of grays are fine, right? You won't go wrong by doing grays because you can't fuck up with grays. That's the nice thing is like you won't clash colors, but so if you don't have a good reason, like topics or like categorical or like you want to emphasize something, just don't, and never use red. Like in general, don't use red. The reason being that there is a cognitive space in our brain for red, which means danger or important at least. It means attention. Okay, so if you have a plot and in your plot you have 5 colors and one of them is red, I can guarantee you that like 80% of your audience is going to focus on the data that is in red. So if you use red, use it knowing that. If you want to really emphasize one of the part of your plot, you can use red. That could be a good idea, right? But in general, be careful, be mindful of using red. Try to stay monochromatic if you use colors, if you don't have a good reason, right? And if you are using reds, desaturate them, right? Don't use highly saturated reds. Those are pretty unpleasant. Cool. Last thing is, don't go black background for your presentation. Except if you're presenting microscopy images, that's true. That's one of the good reasons. There are a few good reasons to do that. Or you want to look cool and you're ready to spend 2 to 3 times longer making your presentations, right? Because that's literally the time it takes to revert everything, invert everything, have everything work in black and white in the reverse direction. It's cool. I do this. It gives the presentation I give like often, like an edge, and it's like people will remember your presentation a bit more. Do it sparingly. Do it because you have a job talk and you need your presentation to bam, have this little like extra. But otherwise, don't waste the time. If you're just doing a lab meeting, do your presentation in white. That's fine. Cool. That one is easy, but it's I often see people not do it. Don't scale non-proportionally, right? Just don't, right? Like no one wants to look at the fat Mona Lisa, right? I mean, this is like it's very unpleasant. So that's really easy. Almost every software, if you hold Shift or Control, right, it's gonna scale in proportion. Just do that. Like there's really no reason not to. Like we're in 2023. Like like computer science. Use vector image. If you can, don't use a PNG. Use an SVG or other types of vector image. The reason being that you can always print them if you need to. Say you've done a graph and then 3 months later you're invited to a conference, you need to print a poster, right? If you've done everything in SVG, well, you just have to put it there and print it, and it will print perfectly, even if it's a 3 meter by 3 meter poster, right? So if you can avoid raster images, the only it's like if you're using a microscopy image or something like this, then like it's an actual image. But for anything that's a graph and a plot, those are lines. Those are a geometrical figure. They're really well described in SVG. Also, yeah, if you ever need to, you have a typo or something like with an SVG, you can always come back and correct it. You want to change that X label to sigma to p-value or whatever, like you can come back and do it also. So it's better, and yeah, your PDF will weight a lot less. Maintain alignment. Okay, rule number 6, which is that this room is pretty well aligned, right? Like you have like a nice thing in the middle. Everything is at the same distance. It's pleasant to see and look at. And the reason being that our brain likes symmetry. Our brains like things that are aligned and not chaotic. So avoid cognitive overload of people by putting your text in weird things, right? Just always have things aligned to each other. If you're putting multiple figures together, they need to be perfectly aligned. My brain sees 1 pixel difference. I'm a bit obsessed by this, right? Like most people don't see it, but when I go to a conference and I see poster, I'm like, this is not aligned, this is not aligned, this is not aligned, right? I mean, I don't tell it to people, it's in my head, but but just there are tools. Once again, Illustrator, Inkscape, Miro, Figma, whatever tool you're using, they have guides, they have auto align, right? So just use that. Let the computer do the job for you. Don't try to align by hand. Don't push 1 pixel at a time, right? Like every software out there will have those things that allow you to do perfect alignment, okay? Yeah, and align your text to the left, if possible. Sometime in the center. There are a few reasons to put it in the center for the title or for like a graph, like a plot, but in general, try to align your text to the left. It's a better default than center as the default, right? Like and alignment is internal and external, meaning that it's not just good enough to align the block of the figure itself, but the bars of the figure, the axes of the figure should be also aligned. If you put multiple figures together, you should align those together, right? So have always this thought process of how can I make it as Wes Anderson, like Wes Anderson-ish kind of like movie, like everything is symmetric, everything is perfectly aligned, it's a really nice building, there's an architect that went here and they used a really good compass and a really good ruler to make sure that all the windows are perfectly square and everything, right? Cool. That one is particularly important for messaging, right? It's important for design, but it's more important for getting information across, which is basically called visual hierarchy, right? This is, for example, this is like, let's say it's a tweet, right? And you have a title, which is super tiny, a big date, and some metadata information that you don't really care about that's really big, and then the message under, which, is there. This is better, right? This is much better. The title is big, the metadata is tiny, the message is clear, right? You can see it. And next slide, right? It's like this is basically called visual hierarchy. So when you're making a plot, if your title is smaller than your X label, like your axis label, right? There's something weird, something wrong there, because the title should be the biggest thing, right? And so try to think of, how do I emphasize? What do I put in big? What do I put in tiny, right? So that my hierarchy, my visual hierarchy, makes it so that the audience's brain and eyes will be attracted to the important things first, right? Like you want to attract the eye of your audience to look at what you want them to look at. So use tricks for that. 8, white space is amazing. Become a Buddhist monk. Embrace the whiteness. Just be zen. There's no reason to clutter things. The more white space, the better. There is that number, which is not always true, but any good figure slash poster slash document should be 70 to 80% white space, right? Which is like, sounds huge, but actually is a pretty good rule of thumb. Meaning, if you have more than this, it probably means it's too cluttered. There's too much information, right? So try to really give spacing between your figure, give spacing between your text. Don't cram things. It's better to have more slides with more white space than slides with a lot of stuff on it and no one can read. I'd rather see like 5 slides with one figure in the center than one slide with the 5 figure on it. Right? Yeah, for example, a lot of posters. You've been to enough stuff now that I think you've seen enough posters. A lot of posters use lines, right? Like they put stuff in boxes, and then the box inside of a box, and this classic design of the poster. I hate it. I mean, there's no reason to use that. If you have a good design, if you use white space and you use visual hierarchy, like in a crafty manner, you don't need lines. The lines will appear out of themselves by your alignments and your white space, so that the visual information is represented and you're not cluttering the brain of the person by having all of those extra information, and so you can focus more on the information. And so the sort of simple sentence in your head to keep it, the less is the better, right? Finally, use bold and italic sparingly. It's not don't use them, but if you use them everywhere, they mean nothing, right? If your emphasis is always there, then it's not an emphasis anymore, right? So just, if you want to use bold, it's something important. It's something that the reader must read. So when you're trying to go across a message, if you have a long paragraph and you want to have this like little bit of information that you want the person to look at because you're talking and you're doing a presentation, bold it. Sure. But if you bold it, be ready to read it as well, for example, right? So you re-emphasize that this was the important part. So just do it smart. Be smart about it. Also, yeah, try not to bold an entire sentence. Highlights, important words, right? Important words, like that's the thing you want to really get at. So be sparingly with it. Italic is a bit more different. It's gonna really separate something from the rest. By putting something in italic like this, it says this is different, right? There's something different about this block from something else. That's why it's often used for quotes, because quotes is another author, right? So you're really saying like, this wasn't from me. This is a quote. This is from another author. Therefore, I'm going to italicize it. So use italic, to differentiate maybe between the label and the legend in a figure. That's a good, just don't overdo italic or yeah. And so rule number 10, which is not really a rule, but it's also the main rule, which is only when you mastered design can you break the other rules, right? Because all the rules I just gave you, you can break them. There is good reason to break them from a design perspective, but really only when you know why you're breaking them, and there is a really good reason you're doing so that you're really going back at the main 2 axes at the beginning of message and aesthetics, right? And there are a reason why sometimes you want to just go there because it's going to get your message across a bit better, but it because you've done everything before and you have a good sense of design. And so try to keep to the rules until you can detach yourself from them, which might be in, you know, X months, year from now. So that's the checkbox, basically. So I'll give you the slides. Every figure you make, try to think of those 9 points, right? And I'll be looking at all the figures you guys made, and when I'll look at them, this is the sort of things that I'm gonna look at, right? So hopefully that'll help you guys get better at doing like figure making. And then yeah, so that was just like, I'm gonna give an example of a design system I made, but just like, this was an interesting thing, which is that it's hard to make your own design system from scratch. So if there are already people, journalists, New York Times, data like data experts, whatever people doing data you like, right? And you particularly enjoy whatever they've been producing, go and copy it. Try to reproduce it. Try to understand what they've done, why they use that font size, etc. Like, just try to deconstruct it so that you can start from somewhere and then you can make it your own later. Maybe take two person, you know, understand them, make a mix of both if that's your fancy. But yeah, but that's the sort of thing, for example, that I do for myself whenever I'm working on a project. Like, I'm gonna try to make myself a document like this, which tells me, you know, like, okay, graph title is gonna be bold, you know, like some things like 12 points gonna be bold, you know, like I write down the size of the fonts, the different colors I'm gonna use, the different roles, you know, like, and so I'm just like creating this document so that like I know I have consistency, right? And then I'm gonna use this as my reference sheet to keep working on the project. And whenever I forget, because I'm human, like we all are, so we tend to forget stuff, then I can come back to that to relook at the things that I've done. Like this one was for my PhD thesis, right? And so that was like, how do I use and how do I make figures for my PhD thesis, right? And so like that was the design rules. Okay. And then finally, yeah, tune your plotting library from default to decent, and this is perfect. This goes to the little thing I had prepared really quickly. Yeah, so like this is, for example, the default from like Matplotlib and ggplot. Come on. Yeah, so this is like Matplotlib's default and our default. It's kind of ugly. It's kind of tiny, especially ggplot. Like this is way too tiny, right, for a presentation. But after a bit of tuning, right, you can get to like much better design, right? Like it's much more clean. You're removing all of the clutter, all of the information. What do I need? I'm plotting a sine function. The only thing I need is my sine. I want my 0, right? Like I want my 0 to be in the center. I want my axis to be here. I want a line to go at 0 because I'm interested to know when it goes up or like above or below 0. This is an example. Right? Like here, you're giving message. Over there, there's a gray thing. Why is there a gray thing? Do we care about the gray thing, or do we care about the curves? Right? Do we care about the box around that? Probably not. It's not interesting either. The size of the phone. This is super tiny. This is readable, right? So like, tune it. Take the time. It's worth it. I mean, literally, you're gonna have to sell that data to someone at some point. Be it your mentor, be it a room, an audience, a classroom. Yeah, and then like the last part we're gonna skip so that, come on, yeah, so that I can show you this. Okay, so really quickly, so this is in Python. Okay, so in Python this is my one advice for you, is use Seaborn. Okay, Seaborn is a plotting library which has two properties which I think are essential and make your life much easier. One, it's already by default looking okay. They've done a fairly decent job at making the figures looking okay. You can tune them and fine tune them to be perfect, but at least you won't be in the ugly range, right? The aesthetic, we're in the middle, right? We're not in the amazing, we're not in the ugly. The second thing is it integrates with pandas. And pandas is Python data frame library, which allow you to load and manipulate data and other do a lot of other kind of computation in a really nice manner. So use Seaborn if you're using Python. If you're using R, use ggplot. But yeah, for Python, it's an overlay on top of Matplotlib, right? So it's nothing else than Matplotlib. It's just a configuration over, right? Because Matplotlib is very powerful. If you spend the time to learn it, you can do anything, really. Like you can really control every single bit of the figure, but it's really hard to learn and really long and really slow. And then, so basically use Seaborn. Okay. So one little thing that I've, like a few of you asked me that question of like, I don't understand why does plt.show not show me the figure? It's because of this little magic line here, the matplotlib inline. By default, like it's not necessarily, it depends, but on some system it's not set to inline by default. So here you're basically saying to Jupyter Lab, hey, I want all the output from matplotlib to be placed here inline, meaning like I'm gonna see them here as rendered. If it's not an inline, then it will by default try to open a window or save them to something. Cool. So one thing that is that Matplotlib has styles, right? So you can install them. You can create your own if you want to, right? Such as like Seaborn Dark, Seaborn Dark Grid, Muted, Notebook, Pastel, Poster, Told, Tricks, blah blah. There's a bunch of different styles you can use. You can create your own. You can install more styles. You can also do ggplot if you wanted to do ggplot style in Matplotlib. But yeah, so you can do the .style.available on your system to know which one you can use, and then you can just simply choose a style by saying plt style.use and then choose whatever style you want. Okay. So I don't often use that personally because I use the default Seaborn style most of the time and I just configure over it. But if you ever felt like installing some cooler style or whatever, this is how you would go at it. The second part is a lot more important. It's called the context, and this is also something that comes with Seaborn. And so the context is gonna set all the font size, the axis and stuff like this, like all the sizes of the elements, and to a particular context. So either paper, which you will never use probably, at least for a long time, and even if you are, paper is too tiny, I find, but maybe. And so if I basically execute paper, it's gonna make me a graph with the font size set for a paper. The reason being, why is it so tiny, is that normally a figure for a paper is gonna be 3x3, maybe max, right? It's gonna be something like of this size. This, when you say fixed size equals 3x3 here, what you mean is 3 inches by 3 inches. 1 inch is 2.5 centimeter, which means 7.5 centimeter of size. Okay. knowing that an A4 is about 20 centimeter in size, this is pretty big on a piece of paper, right? Like this is, you can put like 3 of them basically. 3 of them would be the size of an A4. So when you set the context to paper, what this is actually expecting, right, is more figures in the range of 2 by 2 or maybe 1.5 by 1.5, which is the actual size you would see on a paper, right, on when you would print on paper. And when you do this, you realize that it's actually okay. Like the size compared to the figure, like we're in the okay range now. So yeah, set context paper. This is really when you're gonna print something like a report or something like this. Maybe be mindful still. Like it's tiny.
The top one is for a presentation. The top one is for a presentation.
The top one?
The top, the context.
The top one was just for the style. This is for the colors, usually, basically.
Context where it says talk.
Talk. Yeah, that's for a talk. Yeah, like a presentation. Yes. Yeah, but even then, actually, for the talk, I often prefer to use something else. So set context notebook. This is the default, right? And this is too tiny. So basically, like notebook. I actually often use notebook for papers, right? I find paper to be too tiny. I prefer notebook because even if I were in a 2 by 2 figure, I would prefer to use like the notebook size. Like I think this is much more legible in terms of legibility, right? So really, like this is making a nature paper and I have so little space and I'm trying to cram everything and it's bad design, but there is no other choice. So notebook is a better default in terms of size. Talk is a bit bigger, but I find talk to be generally too tiny for a talk. So I actually don't really use talk much. What I use is poster. Poster is good, I think. Poster is the right default size for fonts and labels. So if you're gonna make anything that's gonna go on a slide and you're gonna present, basically go on set context paper poster, right? Like this, that the whole audience is gonna be able to read your plots, right? And so this little thing is a little trick, but like this trick goes a long way because it really makes everything consistent, and then you can just change the fix size and whatever, but like the font size is going to be consistent and nice and readable and big, right? And so basically in summary, it's just like those are like 5 lines. You just put them at the beginning of any Jupyter notebook you do, and that you're going to be good. Like it's just a little hack trick, but the rest is gonna be configuration. Maybe you're removing this, and you can try to like play with the different seaborn style. You could go dark if you are trying to do like a black one. Seaborn white or white grid, that's gonna get rid of the grid that you see in the gray here. It's gonna make it white on a white background. So you can try, I recommend just trying, play with them. Just like, have fun, look at the one you like best, look at the one that talks to you, and you would like to make your own sort of, design rule. Right. Cool. That's basically about it. Is there any question on design and how do you make, effective figures and things like this? Yeah.
When you were mentioning the size of the axis, for instance, do you put your like title equal, I don't know, 16 or 14 into the context of the
So it's gonna do it for you, right? So it's gonna try to make it the right size and everything for you. If right, like for example, like here is like 2.5, 1.5, 0.5. There's like a lot of information. Here it's it's removing information for that was there for no reason. It's gonna try to do its best job. If you really want to go down, you go into the matplotlib RC, but you're gonna use R, so it doesn't really matter for you. And I don't have the same good tricks. R doesn't have Problem with R is that it's highly configurable. It's better by default than Matplotlib, has a better default, but it doesn't have something like Seaborn, where it's sort of like, someone has done the work of making it look decent by default. So Mark has some really good tricks on how to make ggplot and look good, which you can ask him, and he think I'll be happy to share with you like the same sort of the thing to put at the top of your file so that it looks good. But yeah, like with R, it's a bit more work-ish to make it look. Yeah, you're a bit more constrained by default. You can. There's no rules that says you can't do it with ggplot. Everything is configurable as well. But yeah, it's a bit less easy. Yeah. Any other question? Okay, then I'm gonna use, because Mark said he was gonna be a little bit late, so I'm gonna use Inkscape really quickly, and I'm just gonna show you have you guys used Inkscape or Illustrator before? No. So who has used something like Inkscape or Illustrator before? 2 person. Okay, yeah, so really not a lot. Okay, so vector-based software. So if you don't want to buy Illustrator, just use Inkscape. It's good, it works. Vector-based software is all about creating shapes based on vector, internally vector math. Right, so this is a shape. I can move my shape. I can also just decide that actually I would like those corners to be rounded. All right, so all of this are parametric, meaning that it's math internally, right? And it's the same if I put a circle, right? Like I can put the circle, I can put my oval, I can decide that I actually want only, piece of the circle, whatever. I can decide on many things based on parameters. One of the cool and quick thing that I use a lot is Control Shift A, or I think it's an object alignment. Yeah, align and distribute. This little thing here, this is the thing you want to use a lot. Like if I select 2 shapes, say I select this shape and then this shape, I can be like, hey, I want the last shape to be on the right and align it perfectly. And this is like a 0 pixel difference alignment, and I want it to be in the center. All right, so I can use that to align things together, right? Or maybe actually I want the reverse. I want you to be on the other side. Boom, on the other side, right? And so like I use this a lot to distribute things and make sure that they're really well aligned. So this is particularly important. You can add textual information. You can add a bunch of other stuff onto it, and honestly, like I don't think it's very worth it for me to do a class on Inkscape. There's a lot of really good tutorials online on how to do all of those things. Just know that it's a tool that exists. It's free, it's open source, it works on Mac, Windows, and Linux, and there's a lot of documentation, and it's getting better over time because the community keeps building new features. And you can go all the way from rasterizing vectorizing like PNGs, turning them into vectors, so you can manipulate them. You can import, basically, if you save. Maybe that's a useful thing to know. Why are you so slow? What's happening? Oh, I think it's because I'm recording. So here, right, I can save that figure. So in Python, to save that figure, I first need to say this is a figure, right? So now I have this as a figure and it's saved in that variable, and now I can just do, all right? I can just save my figure as myfig.svg, right? And that's gonna save that figure to a file, myfig.svg. And now it's saving it as a vector file, okay? But if I were to do it as a .png, I'll save it as a PNG file. Like Matplotlib is smart enough to know, okay, I have your stuff, I got you covered, just give me a file type, I'll figure it out, right? And it works with many file types. Not all, but yeah. Cool, okay. I think that's pretty good. Should we take, let's take 5 minutes of breathing, and then we move on to project.